My grandfather, Alan Crosby Hardison's uncle, Wallace Libby Hardison, came to California looking for oil. And he found oil. That was fine. And he and his partners started Union Oil. But he also found Nathan Weston Blanchard and decided to farm. And so the two of them were partners in Limoneira Company. And Uncle Wallace decided that it would be good to have his nephews come help. And my grandfather, being his nephew who had just graduated from the University of Maine with a degree in civil engineering, came, and his other nephew, who was Charles Collins Teague, and who in Maine, the Collins lived across the Aroostook River from the Hardisons in Caribou. So they all came to California. And that's how the Hardisons started. And then my grandfather met a crane who had come from Ohio in the gold rush with his uncle or cousins, the Briggs brothers. But they decided there was more gold in the ground than there was in the miners' pockets for them. So they started farming in Davisville, which is now called Davis. But they also decided, being farmers, that, well, they could get into the market earlier with deciduous fruit that would be grown in the southern area of the state. And they knew the Moore brothers who owned Rancho Sespe, or actually the Santa Paula East Saticoy rancho. So great-grandfather Crane, and I think he just, and his uncle, came down to Southern California to meet the Moore brothers. And they had made quite a bit of money from the gold in the miners' pockets, not in the ground. And so they bought the Santa Paula East Saticoy rancho. Jefferson Crane had a daughter, Cora Lenore Crane, and she and A.C. Hardison married. And those were my grandparents. And then my father was one of their 9 children. I think I would say the 5th or 6th, 5th. There are 3 younger than he. So, and I am the elder of the 2 that my parents had. And my mother came from a family in Northern California who had come from Holland in the 1840s, I think. Mother came to visit her cousin, Elizabeth Hardison, and met my father. And that's how that got started. When I went off to Stanford and he was already there, she told him he ought to call me up and date me. Well, so he supposedly had a list of all these girls he was going to take out. And he called me and asked me to go for coffee, and I said, okay. And that's the end of that story. I came back to Santa Paula, and we were married. Lived in the Saticoy area. And had 3 children, Gordon, Ann, now Lisa Ann, and Margaret. And then he was killed taking saws to our equipment down in Riverside in an airplane accident. And then I dated a farmer who had gone to grammar school with, who was farming the parcel next to Dad Kimball's, because he also, his uncle owned that. So, and he asked if he could take me to a Farm Bureau meeting one night, and I said, sure, as long as you'll take the babysitter home. So he did. We had 3 more children, and Actually, we moved from South Kimball Road around the corner to Telephone Road on a parcel that Uncle Albert owned, and had 3 more children, Nicholas, Peter, and Robert. And, well, Nicholas and Peter. And then Kelly's parents passed away, so we moved up to his house, or his parents' house in Santa Paula, which this year I have now lived in 50 years.
Wow.
Kelly was farming.
Yeah.
But he died of lung cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I had 6 children, and he had just signed a lease for another 100+ acres to farm in December and died in January. So the question was, now what do you do? And Volney Craig, who was then manager of Lehman Air Company, called and asked if Lehman Air could farm for me, and I thought about it and said, oh, well, I thought I might be able to do it myself. And I was too cheap to pay somebody else to do it. So Kelly said, you'd be a lot more interesting if you did something besides feed people and change diapers. So I said, all right, you help, and I will. And I did. And that probably saved my life after he died, because then I really did get involved, and I was an adult instead of mom and the farmer. The best thing that I ever learned from that, well, the one that always makes me laugh, is that the woman who staffed me as a fundraiser had a sign on her wall that said, take your cookies when they're passed. So when something comes along that you're interested in, take it and do it.